Hello wonderful people, and welcome to another tutorial. I know these are two right side by side, but I was excited and I wanted to share this one with you. So what you need to paint this lovely owl is a pencil and an eraser. It doesn't matter which pencil and eraser you take. You also can use a kneaded eraser, which will help to dab away the graphite in the end. Some brushes, some bigger and a smaller one for the details. Some masking tape, which I have already used on my paper, watercolor paper of course, and paints. I have used a small palette of Schmincke Akademie watercolors, but you can use any you have. I only used 3 colors for the whole tutorial, which are yellow ochre, ultramarine, and English red or burnt sienna, whichever is in your palette. First you need a sketch. I have linked a blog entry where you can see my sketching process or a detailed view that I have scanned in, because I have actually written the tutorial beforehand and am now filming it. You can see the steps you need to do the sketch yourself, but you can also print it out and trace it if it's easier for you. I feel like sketching is one of the basic skills you need for painting with watercolors. So I have added the process how I sketch, how I simplify the shapes, and which maybe is easier for you to do too. Start with a light sketch, define it, add details, and then you can go into the painting process. As I was painting this 2 times actually, the paintings look slightly different. And here I want to tell you that it's for me almost every time the case, because I adjust smaller things or make slightly different painting choices when I paint things. Still, the tutorial applies because you can see me painting in real life, and I have actually written the tutorial while painting, so the descriptions are correct and will work out for you. You also have to know that these little choices we make during the painting process lead to different results. So don't be afraid if you paint it and it looks different. Don't be afraid, it's totally normal. And if you paint it a second or third time, it will look slightly different too. So enjoy the process and creativity and the small little choices we make during it. To draw, I left the lower side open and have not masked it yet. The square of the background is slightly smaller than the painting itself because I wanted it to be like a focal point on the owl itself, while the stump is actually crossing the line of this background. In the end, when you're finished with the sketching process, please dab away some of the paint or erase the lines that you don't need and mask the 4th side of the square. If you don't have masking tape, that's fine too, because you still can draw a rectangle or square and paint within the lines. The masking only makes it easier for you to not cross down. For the purple background, mix English red or burnt sienna with ultramarine until you have a grayish purple. Wet the area and then apply to your paint. I have been using a size 8 brush for this process. For the written tutorial, I think I used something different. Just be free. You're not limited to the supplies I use, but should use whatever is available to you right now. That way you will also get to know your supplies, your palettes and brushes. And if you feel the need to upgrade, you can do it on your own terms. Please don't feel the need to buy something just to follow the tutorials. That's not my intention, and I don't think it's beneficial to anyone. Slowly apply the paint on the wetted surface. I don't want it to be an even covering. That's why I apply it thicker in some areas and thinner in others, add swirls, etc. The only thing I'm very careful about is the line to the owl, that I don't paint over the owl itself. If you see pooling of the paint like I have right now in the corners, dab it slowly away and carefully with a paper towel. You can also use a damp brush to remove some of the moisture. It will help the paint to dry more even, because these water pools is what is causing blooms in the paintings. And I'm pretty sure that not everyone wants them and not everyone knows how to avoid them. So if you dab away the pools, it will help you to create a more even background. After the paint has dried, you can remove the masking tape. For me, it's pretty easy. because I have used cotton paper for this tutorial. If you struggle with it, you can heat it a little bit with a fan and then remove it slowly. For the next step, I have used yellow ochre and English red and a tiny bit of ultramarine for a yellowish, reddish, creamy color in very light consistency. It's actually more water than color for this step, so I want to have a very light underpainting. It will even dry lighter than it looks right now. You can use a smaller brush if it helps you with this smaller details, because it's not one that is covering the whole owl. You can dab it slowly and carefully around the eyes, around the eye feathers, these big circles, a little bit under the chin and around the beak. You can also add some little strokes to the feathers on the wing, because those are a little bit darker for the owl, and adding multiple layers will add some depth to the finished piece. When I realized that the paint is a little bit too thick and too dark, I add a little bit of water. I go slowly and carefully, just recreating the shapes and shadows. I don't have to think about detail just yet. I also add some shadow next to the wing and underneath the belly, right to the stump, because it's where even the white feathers will be darkest in the end. I do the same to the tail, but leave a little bit white in between. In the finished piece, this will add a little bit of texture. In watercolors, it's important to leave some whites. I use the same mix, add a little bit more of English red for a more reddish color, and paint the middle tones. With a smaller brush, I dab around the eye circles, I'm not sure how they called in the owl, around the beak, and give a little bit definition around the eye itself. In the blog you can see close-up photos of these steps, so you can actually see where you can put the marks in each step. With the same mix, I add feathers, which are just small, short lines on the head, the belly, and the wings. I also add some straight feathers on the side of the neck and go slowly. I hold the brush a little bit sideways because it's easier for me to achieve those looser, more spontaneous lines that I want for the feathers. I try to go with the shape of the body and the direction the wings and feathers are actually on the living owl. I also add some definition to the wing, painting around it a little bit with just a small stroke and a little bit more intense color, and add it to places where I feel like it needs this middle tone more. To have a nicer flow, I add a little bit of water sometimes, just to achieve a nicer feeling for me of the paint on the brush. As the area beneath is already dried, it doesn't flow much too, so you actually have lots of control. As you can see, sometimes I press down on the brush to create a broader stroke with a thinner brush, and sometimes I use the tip only for very, very fine details. The beauty of brushes is that you really are flexible to what strokes you can create. I add a little bit of ultramarine to the next step. The color now resembles a little more of a burnt umber type of color. Adding blue to brown often leads to it turning to gray or blackish color. That's what I went for. After I added a little bit more ultramarine to the mix, I am now painting the dark details. I dab again a loose line around the eye circles, add a little bit detail to the stray feathers on the neck, and also around the beak. I add an outline to the eye and a hint of an outline to the other eye. It's not the color of the eye itself yet, which I will paint with an almost black, but still a darkish brown. Additionally, I add more shadow to the side of the wing and some darker feathers on the wing itself. I place them a little bit apart from each other and just shape the wing itself using some strokes. By using very little colors and mixing them together, you also achieve a very harmonious look in it itself. By using the darker tones, we are creating darker values. So far the painting was pretty light to middle tones, and now we have really contrast that we have created. By adding more ultramarine to the mix, you will receive an almost black color. That's what you can use to fill in the eye. Leave a little bit of white for a reflection in the eye. I used a tiny bit of the same color for some darker shadows around the beak. In the end, I use some yellow ochre for the beak itself. It's straight from the pan and I have not watered it down yet. For the stump that the owl sits on, I used some watered down yellow ochre that I mixed in the palette and just a watered application that I use in some areas. And then I add some of the English red, or you can use burnt sienna because it's a similar hue, that I add in the remaining areas. Where the colors touch, they flow into each other, and I actually like this mix. I feel like it looks very natural and nice. Then I use some of Ultramarine straight from the pan. It's a very intense color here, and add it to the shadowy places. Where it mixes, it creates a very natural look, a little bit stylized, which the painting in itself is, and I actually like it. After it has dried, I use some of the Ultramarine that I have used before with a small brush that I hold very flat and brush only with the side of the brush over the stump to create a dry brush effect. It doesn't cover all of it, but it creates texture that to me looks a little bit like tree bark, and that's what I wanted to achieve. So now you only have to let it dry and enjoy your painting. I hope you liked the tutorial. Let me know what you would change and how you would correct it. Also link me if you post it on Instagram. I would love to see what you've done with it. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and I hope to see you soon. Bye!